The reading of the Gospel today continues our study in Matthew, turning again to the 16th chapter, picking up where we ended the reading last week, now reading from verse 21 through verse 28. Listen intently, for this is the word of the Lord. From that time on, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and undergo great suffering at the hands of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, God forbid it, Lord, this must never happen to you. But Jesus turned and said to Peter, Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. Then Jesus told his disciples, If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For the Son of Man is to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay everyone for what has been done. Truly I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. The word of God for the people of God. Pray with me. Lord, our minds are limited. Our ways are not your ways. Nevertheless, you've drawn near to us and proclaimed the way by which we might connect our lives to that which is eternal. Forgive our faltering. Forgive our hesitation. Forgive our fear. We pray today, once again, we will listen for your word and that we will respond as Christ invites us. We pray in his precious name. Amen. Kind of foreboding words from that time on. It indicates there was a departure from what they had known to this point. And if you read the Gospel of Matthew, it's pretty easy to see there is a first segment of Matthew in which Jesus becomes connected to the communities where he visits, he proclaims, he preaches, he touches broken lives and brings healing. He often speaks to them in ways that help them understand God is at work in a new way. And then there is another segment that begins right where we began today, saying that Jesus now tells his disciples, no matter how you may imagine God's kingdom, no matter what hope you might have had or what expectation you might have had, it must be sublimated to God's will. And this is hard for human beings. We are people who are desirous of having our own way. It's part of who we are. We want the world according to us. Remember Lucy Van Pelt years ago in the Peanuts cartoon strip. At the first of the year, she went to all of her friends with a long list of reforms that they should make. She's saying, if you will do these things, my life will be better. And we all have that temptation to the people around us. We could give each of the people we know well a list of things we wish they would start doing and another list of things we wish they would stop doing, the ultimate end of that to make our lives better. It's kind of a human predisposition that we would like to have life on a nice, smooth, level plane. No bumps, no bumps, no bumps. Jesus, from that time on, began to tell his disciples that's not how the kingdom of God works. As much as we're desirous of a smooth ride, if you follow Jesus, that is not going to be the result. In fact, he says that you will have suffering, and self-denial is part of your order for each day. When Jesus introduces this concept, Peter, in particular, responds with passion and with resistance. Jesus has touched a nerve that runs to the very heart of who human beings are. What we really desire and what God sets before us are in conflict. It was always about this time of year when I was a very young fellow that we had one of the annual adventures in my home family. Labor Day was the annual gathering of my mother's family down in Washington County. Now, I came from a big family and fairly limited means, so a trip clear from Cambria County all the way to Washington County was a big deal. And I know young parents today cannot even imagine how we all piled in that 1950 Chevy sedan. But when I say piled in, I mean piled in. There were no seat belts. We sat on each other's laps. There was no such thing as a car seat, even though we had at that, as I think back, my younger sisters were babes in arms. Sometimes we would lay in the window up on that shelf, making ourselves a ready torpedo had there been a sudden stop. We sat on each other's laps, and we journeyed over roads that were far less smooth and direct than the ones that we enjoy today. I remember going through all the little towns along the way. We made our way down off the mountain from Johnstown across Route 30. We would then get on what is now called 136, but it used to be called 71. Did you know that? And we'd make our way down through West Newton and down along the river and then across the other side and work our way up through Ross Graver Township. We stopped at all the stoplights. We saw all the activities in people's lives. We got a chance to look right into all these communities along the way. And the question rang out repeatedly, are we there yet? And as much as we wanted to be there, I have a suspicion my folks wanted to be there a whole lot more. And then finally, we would pass through Washington on old Route 40, and we'd take Route 31 down the hollow, as we called it, and finally to Brush Run Road and winding. We used to count how many curves there were. We could never remember from one year to the next. And finally, we would come around a turn, and there was my Aunt Nettie and Uncle Russell's home, and my grandmother Jackson there to greet us, and we would enjoy a day with the cousins. And then we would get back in the car, and I don't remember any trip home. All I knew is I woke up the next day in second grade. It would be nice if life were smooth sailing. In the time that I can remember going to the reunion, and things changed. We eventually moved it from Labor Day to the Saturday closest to my grandmother's birthday. A lot of things changed. But what changed for the trip was Route 70. We'd get on the Route 70 over here at New Stanton, and we would sail across, no stops, no turns. We were in our seats. We had seat belts. It was convenient. It was fast. It was efficient. But something missing. The connection to all those little places. The interaction between all of us crammed. Oh, I said piled. Well, crammed is a good word too. When I was serving a pastorate in Johnstown, it's funny, I remember addresses. I remember one of the favorite ladies of the church, 330 Hannah Lane. I also remember 808 Leisure Avenue. And I thought, wouldn't that be a great address? I live on Leisure Avenue, at the corner of Easy Street. Wouldn't that be nice? You know? There is this sense in us that we're all striving to smooth out the bumps in our lives and to minimize any disruptions. And more than that, we look down the road and we try to imagine how we can avoid things that will eventually come to us and minimize their damaging impact. That is what we do. That's what we like. That's what we would want to do. Jesus came preaching and teaching, and people gathered around and said, no one ever taught like this. People gathered because his words lifted their hearts and inspired them to understand the world in a new way. These disciples were near Jesus, and they began to get the idea, this is the one. In fact, Jesus asked that question, we read it last week, up in an idyllic setting in Caesarea Philippi. What are the people saying about me? And they said, you're somebody special. You're one of the prophets. You're like John the Baptist. Who do you say that I am? And Peter figured it out somehow. Revealed to him, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said, you're the star pupil. You are the rock. In fact, from now on, we're going to call you Rocky. And we're going to start with you, and we're going to build the kingdom's work. Pretty good stuff. A few verses later, Jesus said, now that you've figured out who I am, you need to know the way the world works is not exactly what you had figured. These guys were saying, when he sets up his new government in Jerusalem, I will probably be one of the cabinet members. In fact, there's some argument among the disciples in the Gospels about who will have the place of prominence when Jesus comes into whatever power he's going to assert. From that time on, Matthew begins this part of this segment of his gospel saying, Jesus began to teach him, it's not going to be exactly what you thought. For the road to happiness and fulfillment and meaning in your life is not a smooth road. It's not a road without bumps and turns. It's not a road that doesn't go through every small little town, every whistle stop along the way. It is a road of suffering. It is a road of self-denial. And for Jesus, it's a road of death. Never, Peter says, never. He had his hopes. This would completely ruin all of his aspirations. And Jesus, who just a moment ago said, Rocky, way to go, he says, now you're the devil himself. I had a lot of days in school like that. I'd get it right, and then I'd get it really wrong. The reversal of figuring it out and everything's that should be, and then that reversal saying, you don't get it at all. Life is filled with those challenges. Peter, according to Jesus, had become a stumbling block. The rock is now in the way. Last week we talked about who wants to be a millionaire. But that all-important question, is that your final answer? Trying to shift our perspective a little bit using a game show thought, well, this week, perhaps we can talk about let's make a deal. For in the process, Jesus said, if you could have everything the world has to offer, but you'd lose your soul, is that the deal you want to make? Jesus assured his disciples that now that they know who he is, he's launching into the new dimensions of what the kingdom of heaven means in this world. And he immediately points to a distinction between what he calls divine thinking and worldly thinking and heavenly thinking. And that's the point today. What's on your mind? Our minds are always filled with stuff. Are they not? Isn't it hard to turn it off? Aren't you constantly going over agitating issues and things that you know you're going to have to deal with? It's almost incessant. It's very hard to find a way, a place, a time to really disengage. This question today about what's on your mind is simply to indicate that the underpinning of what it means to be a disciple of Jesus requires an intentional shift from what comes naturally to what has been revealed. This exchange between Jesus and Peter is something that the church has wrestled with from that afternoon in Caesarea Philippi to this very morning here in western Pennsylvania. Jesus' response crystallizes the divide between the way of God and the way of the world. Jesus and Peter have this conversation, and Jesus says, you're going to have to get out of my way, Satan. You're a stumbling block to me. And then he immediately explains that Peter's frame of reference is insufficient. You're seeing this from your own point of view. You're seeing this from the things that you want. And that is not what Jesus came to do. He did not come to give us our way. He came to call us into his way. One of the great failings of the Christian church in North America, I believe, is that we are trying to figure out a way to have God give us what we want, instead of asking God, what do you want of us? For true discipleship is not about self-fulfillment. It is about sublimation of our desires to the will of God. And once in a while, John Wesley said this, once in a while what God wants and what we want are one and the same. But in his great covenant prayer, John Wesley said, and sometimes they couldn't be more different. In order to do the things for the kingdom, we have to completely set aside our own desires and wishes. So it's an exercise in the deciding process, the decision process of how we see our place in the world and what we're willing to do. And all of us would like to live on Leisure Avenue. All of us would like to live on Easy Street. Interstate highways are nice. They're smooth. In fact, I noticed on our car has some electronics in it, and it'll tell you how you did with your last tank of gas. And I noticed that on one of the legs of our trip home from Wyoming, our average speed was 67 miles an hour for 5 hours. Boring. Had we gotten off on some of the old country roads, it would have been far more interesting, but have taken a lot more time. Therein lies the dilemma. This desire to get there quick and to get there with the fewest stops and the fewest difficulties. Ask my family, we don't even stop for rest stops. You can hold it another hour. I have learned that you can't always hold it another hour. And when a certain word is said in a certain way, then we stop at the next place. When Jesus invites us into the way of God, he never asks us, do you agree with me? That never comes from Jesus' lips. What he says is, take up, deny, follow. As much as it would be pleasant to say that the Christian faith is a way to get what you want in this life, it is not true. It is a way to give you in this life what is most meaningful. And that is to have a life that is in rhythm and in lockstep with the purposes of God. And it will often take us to a place we didn't want to go, a place of inconvenience, a place of bumps and bruises, a place in sharing the needs of others, sometimes the hurts of others, sometimes the self-inflicted hurts of our own life. But it is what we're asked to do. Jesus said, now that you know who I am, you need to know the way is not easy, but it is the way of God's will. We can't help but typically let our own minds run to the things that we would like to have, the place where we would like to see life smooth, uninterrupted, without challenge or difficulty. You'll not find that in the gospel. But Jesus did tell us that if we walk in the way of discipleship, our life has meaning. Not only that, we're a part of something that is eternal. Something that nothing in this world can disrupt, no matter how difficult or challenging the circumstance may become. Just from a simple mathematics perspective, no matter how hard your life will be, if you live the 70 years that the Bible says you can reasonably expect, or 80 years, which by reason of strength the Scripture mentions, or we've seen lots of people live into their 90s and sometimes into their 100s, but the day comes when that journey ends. And even if every day of those 100 years is filled with trial and suffering, it's nothing against the backdrop of eternity. Would we trade, then, these few years in this way of life to gather for us things that have no lasting value and to hoard things that mean something to us now, but in another year, another 10 years, or another 100 years will not mean anything to us because the old saying is true, you can't take it with you. So let us not be duped into thinking there is an easy street, that there is a Leisure Avenue upon which we can live. It is not so. Mark Driscoll, a pastor, says, salvation costs you nothing, but discipleship will cost you everything. Salvation occurs in a moment. Discipleship takes a lifetime. Salvation is something that God does for you. Discipleship is something you do for God. Sadly, many only preach of the life of decision, not the life of discipleship. The result is that when people hit hard times and life doesn't seem to be working the way they expected, they become disillusioned with Jesus rather than devoted to Jesus. What's on your mind? Me first? What I want? Does every dream and aspiration you have in your heart and mind begin with I or me? Or do we watch and walk and listen to Jesus as he said, now that you understand who I am, understand this. The way of walking with God is not always an easy way. It requires denial of things that you would have, ways and places you would go. But in the end, you walk with Jesus. And there is a fulfillment there that nothing in this world can bring. Let us learn to see life not from our narrow perspective of here and now, but the perspective of eternity. Jesus said it so clearly to Peter, you are setting your mind on things that are not divine. They are human things. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit them if they gain the whole world but forfeit their life? What will they give in return for their life? Pray with me. Lord, forgive us not just the thought of an easy life, but all the ways in which we angle, the ways in which we connive, the ways in which we invest, the ways in which we work with such diligence to provide an easy way, when what you've called us to do is to follow Jesus wherever he leads. So we admit freely today that we have not yet fully come to that place, and pray that you would be merciful and patient, and that we would take those steps today, that we would walk with Jesus wherever he would call us to go. In the name of the Christ, who is worthy of our praise, amen.